Good day, my co-educators slash my dear classmates in this subject, especially to our dear professor, Dr. Mildred Tovalles. Sir, good day. By the way, allow me to introduce myself first. My name is Daisy May BACNOTAN, and I'm going to be your presenter for today. So if you're ready to listen, then let's start. So my topic for today is all about the direct method. So let us all listen and learn more about this topic. Okay, so before we proceed to our topic for today, let me give you first a quotation from Benjamin Franklin, and I quote, "Tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn." End quote. So this is basically what will happen if we involve our students or learners more in our lesson inside of the classroom. The more they will learn in the student-centered approach. Okay, so furthermore, the direct method receives its name from the fact that meaning is to be conveyed directly in the target language through the use of demonstration and visual aids with no option to the student's native language. Okay, so like what I've said earlier, no native language or vernacular is allowed inside of the classroom, having the direct method or the target language, which is the English language. Okay, so before we proceed to our topic again, there is actually a scenario or an experience from a particular teacher while he is delivering his lesson to the class. And let's call this teacher as Teacher Alex. So I will run down this experience by reading it, and then later on we will be using this experience of Teacher Alex to the topic that I will be discussing later on. So let's read all together. The teacher is calling the class to order as we find seats towards the back of the room. He has placed a big map of the USA in the front of the classroom. He asks the students to open their books to a certain page number. The lesson is entitled "Looking at the Map." As the students are called one by one, they read the sentence from the reading passage at the beginning of the lesson. The teacher points to the part of the map the sentence describes after each has read a sentence. Okay, so we have here the passage, and the passage begins, "We are looking at the map of the United States of America. Canada is the country to the north of the United States, and Mexico is the country of the south of the United States. In the east is a mountain range called the Appalachian Mountains." So after the students finish reading the passage, they are asked if they have any questions. A student asks what a mountain range is, and Teacher Alex turns to the whiteboard and draws a series of inverted cones to illustrate a mountain range. The student nods and says, "I understand." Another student asks what "between" means. So the teacher replies, "You are sitting between Maria Pia and Giovanni. Paolo is sitting between Gabriela and Tina. Now, do you understand the meaning of between?" The student answers, "Yes, I understand." After after all of the questions have been answered, the teacher asks some of his own. Class, are we looking at the map of Italy? The class replied in chorus, no. The teacher reminds the class to answer in a full sentence. No, we aren't looking at the map of Italy. They respond. The teacher asks, are we looking at the map of the United States? Yes, we are looking at the map of the United States. The question and answer session continues for a few more minutes. Finally, the teacher invites the students to ask questions. Hands up, one girl asks, where are the Appalachian Mountains? Before the class has a chance to respond, the teacher works with the student on the pronunciation of the word Appalachian. Then he includes the rest of the class in this practice as well, because he is actually expecting that they are actually having the same problem with the long word. Later, another student asks, what is the ocean in the West Coast? The teacher again interrupts before the class has a chance to reply, saying, what is the ocean in the West Coast or on the West Coast? The student hesitates, then says, on the West Coast. Correct, say the teacher. Now repeat your question. What is the ocean on the West Coast? The class replies in chorus. The ocean on the West Coast is the Pacific Ocean. The teacher next instructs the students to turn to an exercise in the lesson which asks them to fill in the blanks. They read the sentence out loud and supply the missing word as they are reading. For example, the Atlantic Ocean is blank the East Coast. Second, the Rio Grande is blank Mexico and the United States. And third, Eduardo is looking blank the map. Finally, the teacher asks the students to take out their notebooks and he gives them a dictation. The passage he dictates is one paragraph long and is about the geography of the United States. So number 1, dictation coming from teacher Alex to his learners. 1. Review the features of United States geography. And second, following the teacher's direction, label the blank maps with these geographical features. After this, the students will give directions to the teacher who will complete the map on the board. Okay, so since I'm done reading the experience of teacher Alex during his topic presentation to the class, let us now move on to the thinking about the experience of teacher Alex. So let us make some observations about our experiences that we can relate to teacher Alex. So the experience that I am talking about will be on the column, on the first column on the left, and then the principles of the direct method that can be inferred from our observations will be listed on the column, in the column on the right. Okay, so what I'm talking here is on the next slide. Okay, so now moving on are the observations, like what I've said earlier, together with the principles. So observation number 1, the students read aloud a passage about the geography of the United States of America. So the principle states here, reading in the target language should be taught from the beginning of the language instruction. However, the reading skill will be developed through practice with speaking. And language, as we all know, is the primary of speech. So from the moment we presented our objectives to our class or to our learners and explains to them what are the expected outputs at the end of the lesson or discussion, so then that gives them the signal that the learners needs to speak the target language from the beginning until the end of the lesson. So number 2 observation we have here, the teacher points to a part of the map after each sentence is read. So the principle states that Objects such as realia or pictures present in the immediate classroom environment should be used to help students understand the meaning. Okay, so like what I've said earlier, by using realia, pictures and pictures and many more learners tend to get the exact point on things through it. Okay, so the teacher will not be translating it anymore to vernacular or to the native language of the learners. It's because through these objects, it can actually represent a simpler idea and meanings to our learners. Okay, number 3 observations. The teacher uses the target language to ask students if they have a question. The students use the target language to ask questions as well. So the principal states that the native language should not be used in the classroom. So this is being repeated again and again, that no translation is allowed. Since we are using the direct method in the target language, that we are talking from the beginning of my topic until the end of this presentation. When we say direct method, again, this is a method intended for the target language, wherein we are only allowed to use the target language, and that is the English language. No more, no less. Okay, so no vernacular, no native language, no first language. So I hope I am clear with that. Number 4. Observation. The teacher answers the student's question by drawing on the whiteboard or giving examples. So the principal states here that the teacher should demonstrate, not explain or translate. It is desirable that students make a direct association between the target language from the language form and the meaning. Okay, so like what I've said, no translation is allowed. So if you are going to explain the topic to the students or learners, make sure that you will be finding ways or strategies to make the topic simpler for our students to understand. Okay, and again, no translation is allowed. So you can use objects, demonstrate it. Any strategies can actually help teachers in simplifying the topics, not by just translating it immediately to the native language of our learners. So again, may it be the teacher or the students, they are not allowed to use the native language because we are using the direct method here. So again, when we say the direct method, you'll know what I mean here. Number 5. The teacher asks questions about the map in the target language, to which the students reply in a complete sentence in the target language as well. So the principal states here that the students should learn to think in the target language as soon as possible. Vocabulary is acquired more naturally if students use it in full sentence, rather than memorizing word lists. So going back to Teacher Alex, he actually, if you could still remember, he allows his students to ask questions in a complete sentence. So by that, Teacher Alex is actually doing good because he tends to develop his learners' vocabulary more naturally by doing that. Number 6, observation. Students ask questions about the map. So the principal states that the purpose of language learning is communication, right? So therefore, students need to learn how to ask questions as well as answer them. Going back again to Teacher Alex, if you can still remember, he tends to let his learners ask questions to each other, and then after asking questions to each other, that's the time that they can also answer the questions of their classmates as well. So they ask the question to their classmates, and then their classmates will be answering them back, and vice versa. So by that, like what the principal said, students or learners should know how to should learn how to ask questions as well as answering them. So if the learners can ask questions, then therefore they can also answer them as well. Okay, so for the continuation of the observations with the principals, we are now on the number 7 observation. And let me read to you the observation for number 7. The teacher works with the students on the pronunciation of the word Appalachian. So the principal states that pronunciation should be worked on right from the beginning of the language. So relating this, when we are making our lesson plans, most especially the language teachers here, we tend to use, or we tend to make a unlocking of difficulties before we touch the topic, the main topic of our lesson. So what are we doing with, why are we doing this? Why do we have to make the unlocking of difficulties for our students? Of course, that is to give them knowledge on the difficult words to be encountered later on the topic that you will be giving to them, as well as giving them the meaning of each of the following words to be encountered. Okay, so that's it. Okay, so number 8 observation. The teacher corrects a grammar error by asking the students to make a choice. So the principal states that self-correction facilitates language learning. So going back to Teacher Alex, in his experience, if you can still remember, there's actually a part there wherein one of his students is asking about the about the coastal area something, and then the preposition of that student is incorrect. So therefore, Teacher Alex is to the rescue. He happens to give two options to his learners, and he actually involve the whole class in order for them to be corrected as well. So luckily the students happens to choose or to pick the correct preposition on the two options, one of the two options that Teacher Alex gave to them. So that's it. So when we say self-correction, it really facilitates language learning. So by that alone, they already learned that that particular preposition is correct when using in making questions. Number 9. So number 9 observation, the teacher asks questions about the students and students ask each other's questions. Okay, so the principal states that the lesson should contain some conversational activity, some opportunity for students to use language in real contexts. Students should be encouraged to speak as much as possible. Okay, so as communication teachers, we are responsible for encouraging our students to speak the language even inside of the classroom, and eventually going outside of the classroom in order for them to be confident, to build the confidence inside of each and every one of them to speak the language or to speak the target language. Okay, and that is the English language. Okay, so in continuation of the observations and principles, here is the number 10 observation. So the students fill in the blanks with prepositions practiced in the lesson. The principal states that grammar should be taught inductively. There may never be an explicit grammar rule given. And number 11, observation. The teacher directs a paragraph about United States geography, and the principal states that writing is an important skill to be developed from the beginning of the language instruction. So, if the learner can actually speak the language, then therefore he or she is also expected to use the target language in his or her writing skills. Number 12, observation. All of the lessons of the week involve United States geography. And the principle states that the syllabus is based on situations or topics, not usually on linguistic structures. So it's actually more interesting to learners if we could actually relate our topics to reality situations. So from there, it is actually easy for them to connect to the lesson. And for number 13, observation, a proverb is used to discuss how Americans view punctuality. And the principle states that learning another language also involves learning how to speak, how speakers of the language live. Okay, so the fact that the target language that we are actually talking about is a foreign language, so it is actually effective if the learners could understand the background and the culture, a bit of the culture of those Americans, as they are, of course, the natives of the English language. Okay, so now moving on is about reviewing the principles. So now let us consider the principles of the direct method as they are arranged in answers to the 10 questions posed earlier. So let us have the questions. Okay, so number 1 question. What are the goals of teachers who use the direct method? Okay, so teachers, communication teachers or language teachers who use the direct method intend that students learn how to communicate in the target language. So basically, this is our target, our aim. We are actually aiming that in order for us to achieve our goal, we have to make sure that we can students learn how to speak the language confidently. So our purpose is to let our students communicate very well using the target language. So that's it. That is our purpose. That is our goal as language teachers. Number 2, question. What is the role of the teacher and what is the role of the students? So, although the teacher directs the class activities, the student's role is less passive than in the grammar translation method. So the teacher and okay, so let me read my copy because it's actually being hidden on the screen. So the teacher and the students are more like partners in the teaching learning process. So I do agree with this since the word cooperation and collaboration is more likely representing the teacher and the students, wherein the cooperation represents the teacher since he or she sets the class from the review, motivation until to the last part of our lesson plan, which is the assignment. So basically that becomes the representation of the teacher as the word of as the word cooperation. And then for the collaboration, so I said that it's actually representing the students. It's because our learners are actually the ones who are performing the lesson that we're actually planned on that particular day, and from that activities that we are actually making when we are actually planning our lesson plans, they are we actually tend to make groupings, activities such as by pair or the jigsaw method. So by that, they are actually collaborating their ideas, their thoughts, their previous knowledge about the topic or the activity being given or presented to them by their teacher. So therefore, that I could say that collaboration is representing the students and then cooperation is representing the teachers. I just don't know if you will agree with that idea of mine, but for me, that's it. Cooperation represents the teacher and the collaboration represents the learners. Okay, so moving on. Moving on, Question number 3 in reviewing the principles. So what are some characteristics of the teaching learning process? So teachers who use the direct method, which believes students need to associate meaning with the target language directly. So in order to do this, when the teacher introduces a new target language, may it be a word or a phrase, he or she demonstrates its meaning through the use of realia, pictures, or even pantomimes. So by this, this will help teacher to simplify this word or phrase to students or learners in order for them to understand better. Number 4 question in reviewing the principles. What is the nature of student-teacher interaction? What is the nature of student-student interaction? So the initiation of the interaction goes both ways, from teacher to student and from student to teachers. So although the later is often teacher directed, so it's not only that you will be following the student teacher and teacher to student interaction, but students need to converse also with one another as well. Okay, so why is this so? This is to build a confidence to each and every students or learners you have in speaking the language. So speaking to their classmate would be comfortable than speaking to the teacher, right? So therefore, they can, if they are actually speaking to their classmates, then therefore, they're quite comfortable in expressing themselves, and so that by that they can actually what do you call this? They can actually practice confidently in speaking the language. So number 5. Okay, so number 7 question. What areas of language are emphasized? What language skills are emphasized? So vocabulary is emphasized over grammar here. And although work on all 4 skills, reading, writing, speaking, and listening, occurs from the start, oral communication or speaking skills is seen as basic. So thus reading and writing exercise are based upon what the students practice orally first, and pronunciation also receives attention right from the beginning of a course. And number 8 question, what is the role of the student's native language? Since the student's native language should not be used in the classroom. Okay, since our main goal here is to let our students speak the target language or the English language confidently with the guidance and care of the language teachers, so we are not going to tolerate vernacular or native language of the learners to be used inside of our classroom. It's because if we tolerate so, then therefore I don't think there would be a learning through the target language. Number 9. Question, how is evaluation accomplished? So we did not actually see any formal evaluation in the class we observed. However, in the direct method, students are asked to use that language, not to demonstrate their knowledge about the language. So learners asked to do so using both oral and written skills. So example, the students might be interviewed orally by the teacher or might be asked to write a paragraph about something the students have studied. So number 9, how does the teacher respond to student errors? So the teacher, employing various techniques, tries to get students to self-correct whenever possible. Okay, so like what teacher Alex did, he tends to correct the learners if the learners are actually they don't know how to ask questions properly. There are errors there, so the teacher is responsible for correcting that. And so by giving options, by the teacher giving options to the learners, which among the options are correct, then therefore that will employ self-correct, or that is how the teacher respond to students' errors. We have to guide them. We have to do so in order for them to be in the right path in learning the language, target language. Okay, so reviewing the techniques, are there any answers to the 10 questions which you agreed? Then the following techniques may also be useful. So we have here, one of the techniques is what you call the reading aloud. So students take turns reading sections of passage, play or dialogue out loud. So again, by letting your students read or read aloud, then therefore this actually exercise them in practicing the language. So this is quite very helpful, a very helpful technique to give the students a heads up in the target language, reading aloud. Another technique is what you call the question and answer exercise. So this exercise is conducted only in the target language. Students are asked questions and answers in full sentences so that they practice new words and grammatical structures. So this is what happened to Teacher Alex's class. He happens to let his students ask questions in a complete sentence, and so this can actually exercise the learners in their grammatical structures. So another strategy we have here, the getting students to self-correct. So this is also visible to Teacher Alex's class. Getting students to self-correct. The teacher of the class has the students self-correct by asking them to make a choice between what they said and an alternative answer he supplied. Okay, so like what Teacher Alex did, he happens to give options to his learners in order for them to choose which of the options given is the correct answer. And so by that, you can actually help the students supply the correct and give the options in order for them to make the choice which of the two options is correct. Okay, so that is getting students to self-correct. Conversation practice. The teacher asks students a number of questions in the target language, which they have to understand to be able to answer correctly. So in order to do this, the teacher must present first a topic. The teacher must discuss the topic for that day in order for the teacher and students, or students to students conversation to happen. Okay, so if no topic is to be discussed or to be questioned, then therefore there would be no question or conversation practice will happen. Okay, no conversation practice will be done. So the teacher must present first a topic, and then that's the time that the conversation practice will apply. Okay, so this is also visible to, like what I've said, Teacher Alex exercise, or the scenario I gave you earlier before we proceed to the topic itself. Another technique is what you call the fill in the blanks exercise. So this technique has already been discussed in the grammar translation method, but differs in its application in the direct method. Okay, so since fill in the blanks exercise would be part on the writing skills, this is actually different when it comes to the direct method, when we use the fill in the blanks exercise in the direct method, because fill in the blanks exercise in the direct method is actually being spoken, and then the other fill in the blanks exercise in the written, they can actually reflect first what would be the answer, what is to be supplied on that fill in the blanks exercise. But here in the direct method, it's actually verbal, it's actually being spoken. Dictation, another technique. So what is this technique all about? Dictation, the teacher reads a passage 3 times. The first time, the teacher reads it at a normal speed while the students just listen. And then the second time, he reads the passage phrase by phrase, using a long enough to allow students to write down what they have heard. Okay, and then the last time, the teacher again reads at a normal speed and students check their work. Okay, so this is what happened to teacher Alex students or learners. He has the what you call the dictation technique, wherein the students will jot down what he is saying there in front of the class, and so the task of the student is to jot down what is being told to them by the teacher, the directions and all. So therefore, by that, it can actually exercise the students' vocabulary and then the grammatical structure they have by this technique, dictation. So okay, so moving on to the last two techniques that we have to be discussed. We have here, second to the last, is the map drawing. The class included one example of a technique used to give students listening comprehension practice, and that's the dictation technique that the teacher Alex applied during his discussion on the geography of the United States. And last but not the least, we have the paragraph writing. The teacher in the class asked the students to write a paragraph in their own words on the major geographical features of the United States. So they could have done this from the memory that they had during the discussion. So if they happens to understand what the teacher is talking in front, how the teacher delivers the lesson, then therefore students or learners can actually write a paragraph about the topic if the teacher will be asking them to write a paragraph using their understanding on a particular topic given to the teacher. Okay, so that's it. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I hope you learned something from my discussion, and then see you next meeting. Thank you so much again, and God bless us all.